The South China Sea at 4 in the morning looks like nothing. No horizon, no stars, just black water and the low throb of turbines moving weight that has no business being here, this far from home, in water that someone else has decided belongs to them. U.S. carrier strike groups have been running freedom of navigation patrols through these shipping lanes for decades. Chinese J-20 fighters have been shadowing U.S. reconnaissance aircraft over international waters for years. Both sides have submarines below the surface right now, tracking each other in silence, measuring distances, running calculations. Neither side fires. The Taiwan Strait is 110 miles wide, and for a long time, that distance has been enough. But this time, someone crosses it. ADF-21, D-ballistic missile, designed from the ground up to kill aircraft carriers, is launched at the USS Ronald Reagan. It misses, or maybe it doesn't. Either way, the president authorizes a kinetic response. That is the moment this scenario begins. Does the United States win a war against China? Or does winning not mean what anyone thinks it does? Before we go further, let's be honest about what this is. This is a thought experiment built from public war game reports, declassified assessments, and open-source military data. There are gaps. It is the version of this scenario I found most worth following all the way through. This is not 1991. The People's Liberation Army of today is not a Soviet export sale with a flag swap. It has spent roughly 25 years studying exactly one thing: how the United States fights wars, and how to make that impossible. The anti-access and area denial network China has built along its coastline is the most sophisticated attempt in military history to deny an adversary the ability to operate in a contested region. Layered surface-to-air missiles, over-the-horizon radar, anti-ship ballistic missiles with a range of roughly 1,500 kilometers, wide enough to cover an area larger than the entire Gulf of Mexico. The plan, China's Navy, has grown to over 350 surface ships and submarines, numerically the largest fleet on Earth. Behind all of it sits a landmass that supplies its own forces in hours, not weeks. Every Chinese asset is within reach of home logistics. Every American asset is operating at the far end of a supply line stretching 7,000 miles across the Pacific. The People's Liberation Army has never faced what is coming, but it was built specifically to stop it, and the people inside it are not afraid. What the United States brings in response is not a larger version of what China has built. It is a different kind of weapon entirely. A single carrier strike group is not a ship. It is a mobile sovereign problem. A nuclear-powered airfield, a submarine screen, a layered missile defense network, and a command architecture traveling together at 30 knots, capable of projecting lethal force across an area the size of Western Europe. The B-21 Raider stealth bomber was designed to penetrate the most advanced integrated air defense systems on the planet. China has those systems. The B-21 was built specifically for them. Virginia-class submarines run quiet enough that passive sonar has genuine difficulty distinguishing them from ocean background noise at cruise speed, and each one carries up to 40 Tomahawk cruise missiles with a range that puts targets deep inside Chinese territory in reach from positions China cannot easily find or track. The key asymmetry is not tonnage, it is standoff distance. The United States does not need to sail into the A2/AD envelope to strike. It can reach inside it from submarines, from bombers at altitude, from surface ships at the outer edge of the threat ring. The limitation, and this matters, is that every missile fired is gone. Every sortie burns fuel that must be replaced. The industrial base that produces precision-guided munitions has been optimized for counterinsurgency for 30 years, and it cannot reload at Cold War tempo. That constraint is a fuse, and it is already burning before the first shot. The opening move is not a charge. No surface ship sails toward the Chinese coast on day one. That is exactly what the DF-21D network was built to kill. The opening move is silence. Submarine-launched Tomahawks strike the support infrastructure for China's mobile missile launchers. Not the launchers themselves, which are road mobile and genuinely hard to locate, but the radar trucks, the fuel convoys, the communication vans that make them functional. Without those, a DF-21D is a very expensive metal tube pointed at nothing. EA-18G, Growler aircraft, designed to do one thing exceptionally well: flood the electromagnetic spectrum across the PLA's command and control network. Orders that should propagate in seconds begin taking hours. Some do not arrive at all. In the operations center, the first sign is not an explosion. It is an absence. A radar node on Hainan Island stops reporting. An operator calls for status. No answer comes. Then a second node. Then a communication relay. The cyber intrusion is already inside the network before the first physical strike lands, and the experience of it, for the men and women watching their screens go quiet one by one, is not the thunder and fire of war. It is the specific dread of a system you depend on simply ceasing to function. A PLA officer will later try to describe that moment to his family. He will say it felt like the lights going out in a room he did not know had lights. Then the Tomahawks arrive, and it stops being quiet. Chinese J-20 fighters scramble. This is not a one-sided air engagement. The J-20 is a fifth-generation platform, and the pilots inside them are trained, disciplined, and have been preparing for this specific scenario for years. What follows in the airspace above the Western Pacific is not a slaughter. It is a contest between near equals at the platform level, resolved by beyond visual range missile exchanges at distances where neither pilot can see the other. The PL-15 air-to-air missile has a claimed engagement range of roughly 200 kilometers, far enough that an engagement can begin, develop, and end before either pilot processes a warning tone. American F-35 pilots firing AIM-120S experience the same clinical unreality. The battle above the clouds looks nothing like a battle. It looks like geometry. On the deck of a destroyer threading the outer edge of the threat envelope, the experience is entirely different. There is a pressure change before the sound arrives, then a column of water where nothing was. A DF-21D variant that survived the initial suppression strike has found something to aim at. Not the carrier, the destroyer. 17 sailors are killed in under 4 seconds. That number, not any tactical calculation, is what drives the next conversation in Washington. But here's where it gets complicated, and this is the part that nobody briefing this scenario in a comfortable room wants to say out loud. The United States wins every engagement it enters. That sentence is almost certainly true. It is also almost entirely beside the point. China does not need to win engagements. It needs to make them expensive enough, and long enough, that the political will to continue erodes before the military capability does. And it has structural advantages in that calculation that no missile removes. Geography is one. Logistics is another. Nuclear arithmetic is the third, and the third is the one that ends the conversation. China currently maintains an estimated stockpile of around 500 nuclear warheads, a number that has grown faster than any previous projection anticipated. Any conventional campaign that genuinely threatens the survival of the Chinese Communist Party crosses a threshold that transforms the entire strategic calculus. The war has a ceiling. Both sides know exactly where it is. That ceiling defines what winning can possibly mean, and the definition is much smaller than anyone wants to admit. The economic dimension is not backdrop. It is the war. China holds roughly $800 billion in U.S. Treasury securities. More significantly, the global supply chain for semiconductors, rare earth elements, and active pharmaceutical ingredients runs through Chinese manufacturing infrastructure to a degree that no sanctions regime has successfully replaced. A sustained US-China conflict would not just raise prices, it would remove categories of goods from the global economy for years. The wound would not be military. It would be systemic, felt in hospitals and factories and supply rooms 10,000 miles from the nearest warship. The most honest resolution to the central question is this: the United States would almost certainly achieve military dominance in a conventional exchange. Chinese forces would be degraded faster than American forces. Specific objectives: air superiority corridors, suppression of coastal missile systems, interdiction of planned surface assets, would likely be achieved in the first weeks. And none of it would be enough to force a political resolution, because China does not need to win the war. It needs to survive it. Those are not the same problem. The scenario that ends with a flag over a capital does not exist without crossing the nuclear threshold. What exists is cost and attrition and a negotiated halt, and the underlying dispute, Taiwan, the first island chain, regional primacy, completely unresolved. A U.S. sailor on a damaged destroyer would describe the moment of impact the way people always describe the thing they didn't expect. Not the explosion. The quiet after. Not the fire. The smell. He would not have language for what hit him because the weapon that built it was designed to have no precedent in his experience. A PLA soldier whose radar station was removed by a cruise missile at 3 a.m. would tell his family he heard the sound before he understood it. A tearing in the air that had no name in any language he knew, and then a light that left no shadow, and then waking up somewhere he did not recognize. In the stories that would circulate through units and families, and eventually into the written record, the strike would be described not as a weapon, but as a verdict. Something that arrived with the certainty of weather, indifferent to resistance, carrying a judgment no court had issued. Military historians, decades later, would organize it by exchange ratios and sortie counts and the geometry of contested airspace. The people who were there would organize it differently. They would remember specific silences. A radio frequency that went dead and never came back. The particular quality of light on the water the morning after the first strikes, when the sea looked the same as it always had and nothing else did. The South China Sea holds its own record. It does not distinguish between the fleets that crossed it with confidence and the fleets that crossed it and did not come back whole. It was there before any of this. It will be there after. It keeps no score that anyone living can read.